What's going on, everyone? We're going to talk Halls of Infusion today, and we're going to open up here because it's a fortified week by pulling the entire room and lusting. Now, I don't always like to show the most clean videos. I like to show some mistakes. So one thing I want to point out is that while I was rounding up, we actually had our melee go down, our healer go down, and then we just had our other melee go down. Obviously not something that you want to do. So the one thing I can warn everyone about is be careful about getting jumped on. These brown little swirls will one-shot you on fortified, and the area of effect is actually a lot bigger than it looks like on the ground. So just be extra cautious and get a little bit further out than you normally would. We're going to go ahead and chain down now here with a couple of these leftover ones that couldn't reach. So we've already blown our lust. Now, lusting and timing in here can be a little bit tricky. You could argue that you can lust that opening room every single week if you want to, or you can save it for bosses, but it doesn't always line up as cleanly as you would like if you do it on bosses, so we do prefer to do it on trash. As you can see, I chose to kind of go up and around here instead of down and around. The main reason for that is that we're going to be doing a skip later in the dungeon that will ultimately help us make up a lot of lost time that a lot of pug groups lose out on. We do have one pug in this group, and this is a route that we're trying for the first time. Again, I like to try to keep the mistakes in these videos so that we can all learn from them. So I'll go ahead and call that out when we get to it. But we're just kind of going pack by pack here. The biggest things is that the orbs will channel on someone and absolutely destroy them. So you're going to want to make sure that you're blowing your stuns, you're coordinating them as much as possible, interrupting what you can. But you do not want those orbs to free cast. If you go down the opposite way, there is actually a pack of 3 orbs, which are these apparatus, that will just sit there and channel, and one by one pick off your group. So this is actually a little bit safer way to go, and it gives you extra percent. Now this was completely an optional pull, but again, we're doing this for the extra percent. It was kind of tucked away here in this little alcove. Same rules apply. Focus on the apparatus, get that thing down, interrupt the defenders, and make sure you're moving out of the jumps. These defenders do put a nasty bleed on the tank, so just be ready to either heal yourself through it if you're a druid or a blood DK, or call for an external if you have more than one bleed on you at a time. Now the good news here is once you learn kind of the pattern of the trash here, on a pull-to-pull basis, it doesn't change a whole lot. So you're able to pretty much do the same things, but as you can see, we are not having the cleanest run so far. We've had 5 deaths already. It's a little bit of a meme here, but this is probably the hardest part of the dungeon, especially because we'll be skipping some of the hard trash later. Now again, we're going for percent, so the only pack we're going to leave up is the triple apparatus pack, the one that we purposely skipped, we went around on, and we're able to get a good chunk of our dungeon percentage out of the way here early, so that we don't have to worry about it later. Keep an eye on that bleed. If you're a dwarf, dwarf it off, especially if you get more than one. Otherwise, like I said, call for externals, heal through it, whatever you need to do based on what tank class you're playing. We're going to try to stun and disorient this apparatus to stop it from just tunneling on someone and killing them. Now this is an underrated pack. The main reason for it is because there's multiple bleeds that can go out. A lot of people just don't think of this as a dangerous pack after going through all the different stuff that you just went through, but it's a lot of the same mobs. You just have to be cognizant, make sure you're interrupting the defenders. Spear Flurry is not a huge deal. You don't even have to stand in range of it, you can back up a little bit. And now we're off to the first boss. Now you might want to sit and talk, especially on a tyrannical week, on how you're going to handle this first boss. Best thing you can do is that when the pool mechanic goes out, you can stack those up. From a tank perspective though, Titanic Fist is his frontal, you can move out of it, you do not just have to sit there and be stunned. He then goes into this pulsing AoE, which we can go ahead and use Darkness for in this group. You can use AMZ, stack up in there as well. A lot of different things you can avoid. And then when the pools go out, we have all of our players who get that mechanic, which is 3 players, go out and stack together. That way we have a nice clean area to work with the boss. You can see them stacking, getting out as fast as they can, and then you just avoid these little orbs here, bring them in on top of the boss, and then make sure they die on top of the boss, and then we are back in business. Now we had our Windwalker Monk go down here. This boss has a lot of health, so we go in ahead and blew our first battle res on him. These pools can get bigger and bigger, just kind of based on what the percentage is on the shield, so keep that in mind. You want to kill this thing as fast as possible. Definitely a lust-worthy candidate if you are deciding to hold lust for the first boss. The timings, though, you just want to make sure you have lust up for the third boss. So the frog boss is one that you'll probably have to do without. It might feel bad just sitting on lust for a while, so completely up to you. As you can see, our lust is almost up. We're going to go ahead and take the ramp up here, and we're going to go the route of all these stealth mobs. So there's going to be one here. You're always going to want to open up with some kind of AoE right before you get into the pack to make sure that you don't get stunned. There's another hidden mob right here. So again, I'm swiping, I'm thrashing, I'm doing everything that I can to get them out of stealth so I don't get stunned as well. If you're a DPS, you do not want to run ahead of your tank in this area. Let the tank be the one that gets stunned if they're not ready for it. Better them than you, because they had something that they could have used to avoid it. Now, one thing with these dragonflies, especially as you pull them across the water here, you're going to want to keep them very still, at least right now until this is hotfixed. They're actually evading at weird times, especially if you're tanking them in the water. And I even bring them over to this side because I've noticed that when I tank them on the side that they're on right over here, that they actually evade a little bit more. So I pull them across and I just don't move. We're going to go ahead and break these guys out of stealth. We actually had one of our melee run ahead of me. He ended up getting gibbed there. So again, rule of thumb, don't run ahead of your tank here. Lots of stealthies, but make sure as a tank you're using your AoE abilities to break things out of stealth before you even get to him. The one that just got him because he didn't expect it to be all the way up there. It does patrol from about where I'm standing now all the way up to that hallway at the top of the stairs there, about midway to the top of the stairs. So keep that in mind. It's a long run back. You don't want to do the walk of shame. And we'll go ahead and we'll wrap this up. And then for the sake of timing, we are purposely going to go ahead and round these up. We're going to do a double pull here because we're going to go ahead and blow our lust. Again, this is a fortified week, so this pack is challenging, and we do not have one of our melee. So I would recommend not releasing there if you do happen to die. This person missed out on lust. But additionally, it slows down our whole entire progress. The only reason we went ahead and pulled is because right now, Bear has a lot of self-sustain, so our healer was able to focus on the other DPS. We're doing a little bit of kiting. Again, this would have been down if we had our other DPS up. We're back in business. We got everyone back up. But play this as carefully as you need to. This would have gone a lot smoother if we had all of our DPS there. But again, we just didn't want to continue to sit on our lust timing. These ads that spawn really are not a huge deal. Just make sure that you're aggroing them. They'll get AoE'd down. Make sure that you are... the fire mob needs to be interrupted when he does his little pyroclast ability that does a heal. So make sure that's done. Otherwise, you can have a kick rotation set up on him and completely mitigate his fireball as well. Alright, once we get this guy down, we're no longer going to have to deal with any of these additional mobs that are spawning. And then we'll be able to get into the next boss. So we'll go ahead and get rezzed up, get healthy, and then we're off to the frog boss. Alright, a few tips here when you're going against the Goliath. The first of which is that as a tank, you're always going to want to have to stand in that green circle. The main reason for that is that a lot of pugs just aren't really sure what to do with these frogs when they come down. We want to try to keep these in the circle, and that way he will eat the frogs instead of eating the tank. But if for some reason the frogs are either dead or they're not being kited through the circle accordingly, you've got to make sure that you're standing in the circle, because if he does not consume anything, he will enrage and kill the group. Now the best thing you can do is tell your group to kind of stack together for when these frogs come down. That way they all kind of spawn close together, and then that way you're also in a position where you can keep them closer to the circle and make sure the frogs are getting consumed instead of the tank. Use things such as your Typhoon, an Ursul's Vortex, any kind of push ability, you can disorient them to stop them from tunneling on someone for a second. But as you can see, we're keeping everything very, very close to the boss, and then I'm moving the boss as much as possible so that when he does this ability, he's got at least a couple of frogs in the area that he can eat. No one else should be within that green circle, just the tank. Other than that, he's got his leap ability, which really isn't a big deal. Move out of it, avoid the brown swirls with the cave-ins with the frogs, keep the frogs close to the boss, and it's pretty easy. Now this is the area that we can go ahead and skip. You're going to need a Mind Soothe to be able to do this, as well as either Shroud or a Demon Hunter Cage. As you can see, we've got Mind Soothe and a Demon Hunter Cage. We're explaining to the group what needs to be done here, but I'm showing this mainly because of how easy it can be messed up. So we've got our Mind Soothe out. You can walk right by these guys. Now this Tauren mob, this Earth Shaper here, needs to be caged. And I'm telling that to the Demon Hunter, but he cages the wrong Tauren mob. And that inadvertently ends up pulling this Ice Caller. So what we're going to do here, instead of panicking and jumping into the next pack and just saying, screw it, we're going to go ahead and just get this down. We're going to take these two, and we're just going to go through and do the skip as we normally would. So that way you guys are able to see the rest. But this can easily be messed up in pugs, so be aware of it. Make sure you're very clear on which mob needs to be caged. So you leave that patrol up. You might have to re-Mind Soothe, but we cage this one. We walk right by it. We Mind Soothe this group again, and then we're able to walk right by it. You can Shroud all of this as well. And then this is the only pull we're going to be doing here, or that we should have done here. So because we pulled all that stuff at the beginning of the dungeon, we're able to completely avoid this little gauntlet here with all the dragons and the casters, which as a bear, I'm a big fan of avoiding any kind of magical damage. Now these drakes, you can outrange their frontal breath, which is something that I do. I believe the breath only goes out about 10 yards or so. So I take step back whenever the breath mechanic goes out. It might get 1 or 2 ticked, but for the most part, if you sit in the channel, you're just asking to die. So make sure, regardless of what tank you're playing, unless you're eating it with an AMS or something like that, that you are outranging that. It makes it just a whole lot easier. Now for this boss, it's pretty much a hide-and-go-seek boss. It does a frontal mechanic here, as well as this AoE mechanic that kind of is like a donut. It's going to be in the same order. So you're going to get this Frost Cyclone, then you're going to have to hide. You're always going to want to hide behind one of the icebergs that have like a little beam of light behind it so that it doesn't shatter. Then you're going to go ahead and have to get out and then right back in again. And you do the same thing for the entirety of the fight. Now the only thing that is worth calling out is that the ticking damage goes up on higher difficulties as well. So there's a lot of just damage that goes out that cannot be avoided. So this is very much a healer check fight. And as long as you can do whatever you can by popping your mitigation, if you're a tank with off healing ability, using that after the wildfire is absolutely wonderful in this because everyone needs to stack pretty close. Do what you can to help out the healer, and this will be a relatively easier fight, but the healer's going to be sucking wind the entire time. So get those innervates ready, do whatever you need to do to help your healer. Alright, so we're off to the official gauntlet of this dungeon. What I like to do is try to take these 3 Ragers and just kind of take them solo, just to try to get our bearings. Make sure everyone coming off of that boss fight gets a lot of their cooldowns back, and that way we can go ahead and get through this pretty easily. This is also going to be the area in which we're going to use our 3rd lust when we get to the little mini boss at the end of this gauntlet as well. These Ragers can be soothed, so feel free to do that. They're not overly problematic. We decided to be safe here just because we're so good on time, and just pull this Proto-Drake solo, try to get him down a little bit more. It gives me a little bit more room as a tank to outrange his breath as well. So we decided to do that, and then we'll end up chain pulling into the next pack as well once he gets lower. Alright, we're outranging the breath as much as we can there, and then we're going to go ahead and chain pull into the next pack. We're going to take these 2, and then we're going to pull them into the next one as well. Slowly getting there. And we're pulling the rest of this stuff. So just like everything else, interrupts are very important, especially on the Gale Singers. Those things will absolutely truck. You also want to make sure you're continuing to have some kind of stun or disorient order just to try to delay casts on these mobs. And then make sure you're soothing the Ragers in this pack. That damage does add up, especially on this week, which is a fortified bursting week. It just makes sense to do that. So no need to take extra damage if you can avoid it. This mini boss is where we would be lusting. Lust just went off. On fortified, this thing is probably more dangerous than most of the bosses in here. It just hits really hard, and it hits multiple targets, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. Also, if anyone gets hit with that AoE Flash Flood, they're going to get knocked off the platform, they're going to get sent to the beginning, and you're going to be down one of your party members. So just getting rid of this thing is super important, and it feels like a very worthwhile place to lust. Alright, so this last boss, this is one that actually can be baited. These little swirlies that it spawns, if you have people stack up in an area, you can generally keep an area clear. So if I actually had Melee try to stay on top of me as much as possible so that when those swirls spawned, they spawned in kind of the same area. That way when the boss does his knockback, I have a safer place to stand. We didn't do a great job of it here. I didn't get my movement down, but there's always a safe place to be. Which is something you need to take advantage of if you actually get people stacked together. Now during this part, whoever you end up with, depending on your ability to do so, make sure you're popping a movement ability, help out whoever you're with, try to get them through, but really nobody should be dying here. This is 100% on each individual player to play that cleanly. There's no damage going out except for if they stand in something. These infusers, because it's fortified, we want to pull as many together as possible, but we don't want their casts going off. So stuns work and disorients work, but they cannot be hard interrupted, so just keep that in mind. Pulling 2 at a time is generally the safest way to go, but if you feel confident or if you have grips like a DK or anything like that, you can feel free to round them all up together. Alright, so we've got the melee kind of stacked on me. We baited multiple swirls in one area. I have a safe zone to stand in for the knockback, and everyone is now playing much cleaner than we were initially. We've got this whole half the room opened up whenever we're stacking together, so it just makes this boss way more clean when you don't have to deal with swirls absolutely everywhere. So try to at least stay on the same half of the room, if not stacking all together when possible. Fortunately, we didn't have the damage to go ahead and just 2-phase that, so we're going to end up doing a 3-phase here. Again, just avoid the swirls, and you're going to be fine. We've got another round with these infusers. I'm going to go ahead and try to get 3 at a time here. You can actually have a priest mind control one of these as well. If you don't feel all that confident in taking 3 or 4 at a time, you can take 2 at a time and the mind control. That's what we just did on this last one. Makes it a little bit easier. And then the boss is down. So hopefully this helps you guys stepping into 20s. Let me know in the feedback below.